My arms and my shoulders aren't very tired. I don't feel too far off from where the Africa Twin is, but my legs and my heels are in my asshole, you know, and it's it's not a great feeling for this bike.
Ready to ride. Those thumbs go up in the air.
Thumb goes up, ready to ride. Let's go.
It has a lot more power.
So next ride is going to be the Ninja 1000 SX. Should be a fun time. Previous ride was the 650 RS or XR. It was a fun ride. Thing I wanted to notice on the last part was it was honestly a fun time. It was a good bike. It got up real quick to speed. It was a real mellow thing. It's a lot more mellow than I expected. Kawasaki 1000 SX. Here we go. We're suiting up for this thing. It should be a good time. First time I've ridden a sport bike. Well, I don't know if it's truly a sport bike. It has what looks like clip-ons, but they also look like triple clamps. I guess I'm going to call them clip-ons because technically they are on the shock body itself, as opposed to a triple clamp that's bolted in with a bar. Let's see how it goes. Looks like a relatively nice TFT display, relatively small windscreen, really kind of folded over. Let's see how I feel here. Ooh my, this is a tall bike. Relatively the same controls as the other Kawasaki. Honestly, the hand controls feel exactly the same as the first one I rode, which is the Kawasaki KLX one, not the KLX 1000, the 1000 versus 1000. It feels like the versus 1000, except bolted onto kind of triple clamps. Brakes, levers, all that stuff feels good. Quite a high position for the feeding. Oh my god, that's some real high footing. Honestly, I thought the other bikes were bad. This one's even worse as far as where the feet are. But then again, it's a style of bike that it is. It's supposed to be like this. Let's see how it goes. Mirrors seem to be pretty solid. Let's see if we can adjust them just a little more. That's a little better. They are quite forward like a BMW, which is nice, so it gives you good depth of range. You look under your arms as opposed to through your shoulders. The bike feels relatively comfortable. You know, it's not that bad. Easy to get in and out. The controls are also adjustable. They feel solid. The brake, master cylinder, the brakes themselves. Bike's not too heavy. I thought it'd be heavier, kind of light, kind of nimble. Big old tank though. You're leaning on this sumbitch.
Ready to ride. Those thumbs go up in the air.
Thumb goes up, ready to ride. Let's go. Ninja 1000 SX. This one, the clutch comes out a lot sooner. Oh my. You really got to lean on this thing. Okay, power delivery. Quite smooth to begin with. Does have a quick shifter. And it just works almost exactly the same as the Kawasaki KLX quick shifter. Very nice, very smooth. I'm not sure if I'm used to this mirror position. It's a lot different than the other bikes. Now I have to say the suspension feels much more planted, feels much more damped. It feels a lot better on the rebound. Honestly, it feels relatively clean. It feels like a very long bike too. The wheelbase is extremely long. Even in comparison to mine, I guess it's because it does have that long wheelbase and the short front wheel, so it just feels extra stretched out. It feels stable. It's kind of weird actually. It feels like the back tire is kind of walking around the front, that it takes, you know, so much for the effort to turn it around or to turn it. Overall, the power delivery is quite nice. I'm in 5th gear right now. It's cruising at almost 4,000 RPMs, 49 miles an hour. We are having a good time. Got a couple bikes behind me. We are in a train. It's group ride, Kawasaki 1000 SX. Display, I like this a lot better than the previous one. Honestly, the Z650 RS XS, whatever it was, the Cafe Racer, I was not a big fan of the heads-up display. Even though it had those mechanical gauges, the numbers were small and crowded and cramped, and it really didn't draw my attention when I looked down. This nice bright white display really catches my attention, gives me plenty of information, my voltage, my temperature outside, my coolant temperature. It gives me how much I've leaned left or right, the approximate time. It is relatively small, but it seems quite nice either way. Let me see, we're taking an alternative route, I guess? Or maybe this is the route we took last time, I'm not 100% sure. Either way, the bike feels good. Easy to get into neutral, easy to stop. I gotta start using that back brake on this one. Let's see how that back brake feels. Other than that, the bike feels quite nice. I'm going to see when we get to the highway portion, see how it pulls. Otherwise, out of the 3 so far, this has been my favorite, even though I don't like the footing position. These foot controls are way up and they're way back, and it's, you know, it feels like I'm pouncing on something, and I'm on the point of complete compression, and it's not very comfortable, but it is quite sporty feeling. You know, I could be more forward with the actual controls on my hands. It's not uncomfortable at all. I don't feel like I'm putting too much pressure on my shoulders, but my knees are compressed. Overall, the bike feels good. Let's see how it goes for the rest of the ride. I guess we're waiting up for the rest of the group. It got split up behind us. Ooh, I do like those taillights in that Kawasaki. And that one too, the X's. Here we go. And we start riding again. Man, great power delivery, very smooth, very linear. Again, I'm not too sure of the configuration of this engine, but it is extremely smooth. Very little, very little harmonic distortions, very little harmonic vibrations. The engine just sings. These Kawasaki's are very smooth so far, except for the Z650, which had a bit of a burble and a bit of blah 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 to it. And even so, it wasn't that bad. But this thing, man, just runs smooth. Now, the advantage of the smoothness is, yes, you're going to transfer very little of those kind of vibrations into your body, and it's going to be able to give you a longer ride because you're able to endure it more. But honestly, this sacrifices the sound. These smooth singing engines, I'm just not a huge fan of the sound themselves. Maybe in full tilt this one will sound a little better, but to begin with, it's not my favorite so far. Now, I do notice I do suffer less from the wind than I did on the Z650. I do have this small fairing in the front, and it does kind of bring up a lot of that wind up to my head and to the top of my head as I'm going over me, as opposed to hitting just straight in the chest, which is nice. So I still get the effect of the wind, but I don't feel overwhelmed by the wind that I feel like I have to slow down because I'm turning into a gigantic parachute. So far, the bike's quite positive. I like it. This is definitely an animal out of its element. I don't know if I just call this a street bike. It certainly doesn't feel like a street bike. It feels like it's meant to do other things other than just beat the street. I mean, it's very well tamed, it's very well mannered, it's geared well. It doesn't ask me to go a lot faster than what it's giving me. It's quite mellow on the takeoff. You know, I can feed in the accelerator, and it doesn't bite too hard. I'm sure it's got a lot of power up the top. This thing sings up to about 11,000 RPMs. I don't think I'm going to bring it up to 11, but at least let's see what we can do when we get to the highway portion. Maybe we'll be able to open it up a little bit and see what it feels like on the upper end. The Z650, as well as this one I wanted to mention, it feels like it's cammed, or at least it's the profile of the cam itself is set up for a more higher end power band where you got to live up there in the 5,000-6,000 RPMs and above just to make it really kind of go. And now it does have a bit of torque, so you can start off and just kind of roll into it. Mind you, this is a 1000. The 650 didn't have as much. It kind of felt like a dog on the lower end. This has plenty. For my weight, for my size, and my personal appetite, this feels real nice. I'm in 4th gear right now, cruising at 49 miles an hour, and I can roll onto the accelerator with no issue, and it gives me all the power I need to move. Yeah, the quick shifter doesn't allow you to shift unless you're actually on the accelerator, as opposed to like my bike, where as long as you're over 1800, it'll cut the ignition for you. We are coming up closer to the highway portion. We're going to go over that hill, cut to the right, and then we're going to go onto the highway and just gonna gun it up there real quick. The rear brake, man, that's tough to get to. I would lower the lever a little bit. It does feel like a gray. It's a little vague in the rear. Not as good as the other bike, honestly. As good as the Z650. The front brakes, honestly, are great too. Maybe it's the better suspension that I don't feel as much dive, but they don't feel as bitey. They don't feel as strong. They don't feel as confidence-aspiring as they did on the 2 previous bikes. Especially the previous bike, the Z650 RS or XR or XS or whatever it may be. Wonderful set of brakes. I love the way they felt. This one, good, but better than the Versus. And honestly, still, I'd probably say even better than my bike on the Africa Twin. Let's see how the rest of this goes. Love that Kawasaki. That Z900 is gorgeous. Back on it, honestly, this bike's got plenty of power to get moving. It just feels like a sport bike, though. You know, it feels like it's out of its element. Like, Donnie, you're out of your element. You know, this is Donnie. He's out of his element. This street riding is not really what it feels like it's made for. I don't know if it's really meant to carve or turn. I haven't really put it or turned it in anger yet. It feels, you know, decent. It feels light. It feels lively, but it feels like a dog with a tail. You know, it's got this big thing in the back end that it's kind of dragging around, and it's got to make sure it whips it around. It doesn't feel very light or nimble. I mean, it feels light and somewhat nimble, but that tail just makes it feel weird. Like it's dragging something in the back. Coming up to the highway portion, let's see how this thing feels. Still kind of wet and squishy on the shifter. I'm not a big fan of this transmission at all. It feels like the same transmission or similar transmission out of the Versus 1000. The quick shifter, when shifting decently, sounds decent, feels decent. But if you're going to crank it into, you know, start getting it going left and right, up and down and stuff like that, and give it a little bit of a whack, it doesn't feel that solid. This transmission at the extremities does not feel that solid. But to do its job, yeah, it does its job. It's a Kawasaki product. It's going to last. I think we're making a right up here. Let's see if we can keep this rolling. Yep, here we go. If I back off here, I should be able to accelerate pretty good. There we go, coming up to the highway portion. Bike leans well, man. It rides well, actually. Not so much doggy anymore. Yeah, this fucker moves. This fucker moves. It's a lot faster than my bike, I'll tell you that. Woo, this jammer moves. That's what this thing is for, is to move. It seems like it does really well on the highway. But still, it doesn't feel like a highway bike. I'm so cramped on it. I mean, granted, my arms and my shoulders aren't very tired. I don't feel too far off from where the Africa Twin is, but my legs and my heels are in my asshole, you know, and it's it's not a great feeling for this bike. If it was a little bit more of a relaxed kind of footing position, man, I don't care if it leans over as much as this thing's a highway monster. Let it eat on the highway and be comfortable. Not a huge fan. The power, awesome. The delivery, great. Brakes, great or good. Suspension feel, a lot better. Man, I just wish, you know, I wasn't giving myself a colonoscopy with my boots.